Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Fiona and I am an artist and illustrator based in the Pacific Northwest. I share my process with finding routine in my art practice and finding ways to keep motivation after graduating art school, where I studied illustration. I love painting outdoors and the landscape and creating narrative within my work, and I share process videos as well as materials reviews and tips to get you started. But in today's video, I want to talk about painting outdoors. More specifically, I want to talk about painting outdoors as an anxious person. I have a hunch that there is probably a large crossover with creative people and anxious people, or people who struggle with mental health. There's always going to be those days where it's just a little bit harder to get yourself out of the house. And I frequently experience that. But I also love painting outdoors. So throughout my experience of painting outdoors, I've found some tips to make it just a little bit easier, make it a little bit easier to get myself out. And how do I process that anxiety once I'm actually on location? I feel like there's a lot of questions that can run through your head, especially when you're new to painting outdoors. I feel like the biggest thing is, what can I expect? Will people come up and ask me questions? Will they look at my work? You know, where do I sit? What do I paint? What materials do I bring? There's like so many questions. And I'm hoping that in this video and my notes, my very messy handwriting, that I can help answer some of those and make it a little bit more manageable for you to get yourself out there and just start somewhere. The first step might be a little bit obvious, but that is to gather your supplies. And I don't mean gather your supplies each time you're wanting to go paint outdoors. I mean create a specific collection of materials that will be your go-to supplies. Something that I did recently is I went through all of my colored pencils and kind of decluttered. I had all of my pencils out at my desk, and I had a bunch of these extra pencils just kind of sitting there that maybe weren't my favorite, but were still really good pencils. And so what I did is I went through those pencils and picked some that I felt could be useful when painting outdoors. And I put them in this kit where next time I go out, or every time I go out, I don't have to sit there and think about what pencils to choose or gather my supplies. I know exactly what I'm going to be bringing. I can just grab it, put it in my bag, and head out. One less thing to worry about. I have a gouache palette that I bring with me as well. And this has some colors that I am very familiar with, that I know that I like to use, and also a few experimental ones, because even if you're anxious, you still have room to experiment. Sometimes once you're out there, you just kind of get in the flow and you start. But by choosing and narrowing down supplies, you are able to reduce that decision fatigue. I feel like the first decision that you're making, and maybe the hardest one, is, okay, I'm doing this, I'm leaving, I'm going to start. And the last thing you need is something to derail you. So decrease those potential derailments as much as possible and put everything that you're going to need in a bag where you know where it is, so you can just grab and go. The next tip that I wanted to share with you for gearing up to painting outdoors while you're anxious is start from a comfortable place, a familiar place. This doesn't mean go out to your park. I mean, it could mean that if that's your most comfortable place, but if you're not feeling like being out in public, start from your home. Get that go bag that you have, or get that, box of supplies that you have that are ready to go, and test the waters. Maybe you're not comfortable with leaving, so go sit in a different corner of your house, or maybe you have a backyard and go sit in your backyard, anywhere where you don't regularly create, and bring your supplies, bring your setup, and sit there and draw or paint or whatever it is that you do, because you are desensitizing yourself to the discomfort of being outside. I think that is a really, really useful tool, because even if you're sitting looking at a different corner of your bedroom and you're not sitting at your desk and you're just literally sitting sitting on the floor. You're getting used to sitting somewhere new and experiencing a new situation that is like a baby step to moving in the direction of going outdoors, going somewhere new. Because even if you're just looking out the window, you can look out the window and that's perfectly reasonable. You know how many times I have painted out my desk window? You're still painting from life or drawing from life if you're looking at your window. There, I've got trees out there. It's spring, everything's blooming, it's beautiful. I've studied the shadows of the buildings that are across the road. There's so much, and you can get so many different materials involved, experiment with what you like, maybe change up your like essentials that you're gonna take out with you. So this is like a trial phase almost, you know? You're working out the kinks at home in a way, and you're learning how you can narrow in or zero in on a composition and redo that same composition. Even if you're sitting in your bathroom and you're drawing your sink or your cupboard or whatever it is, or you have a window in your bathroom that you wouldn't have thought to paint out of. It still counts, and you're still making that step of facing your fears. The next step that you could take after that is that if you have a friend or family nearby and you feel a little bit extra spicy, extra, you know, geared up, you can go over to their place. If they have a backyard, you can sit in their backyard and experience, you know, what the different lighting or the different plants, the different environment might feel like. Or even if it's just indoors in an apartment, you can sit there, draw out their window. That is a really helpful experience as well. Moving on to step 3 is when you want to go on a fact-finding mission. Sometimes it's helpful to kind of lay the groundwork, suss out a place before you commit and bring all your materials and all your supplies. And this is a very helpful experience because maybe you want to go to a new park, but you're not quite sure what to expect and you're not sure what the environment is. So something you could do is leave your supplies at home if you want, and you want to do quick little sketches, bring a pencil or something. But if you go walk around, experience what the sounds are, the smells are, what it's like getting there. You can envision like what's it like to find parking, or if I'm walking there, what is the walk like? Again, desensitizing yourself to things and becoming more comfortable, knowing what to expect. So then when you're ready to bring your supplies out and paint, you'll have a game plan and you know what it's like to be there. This is why I go to the same places all the time. I go to the same parks because I know how to get there. I know what to expect for the most part. Also, something I want to note on the topic is that this video is not about maximizing control. This is desensitizing yourself to the fact that we do not have control. We do not have control over what is going to happen when we are outside. We can't control anything really in life, you know? This is about getting used to the freedom and the opportunity that lack of control and exposure to new environments and new places can bring about to our art. The fourth tip that I have and suggestion is perhaps another very obvious one, but this is to bring a buddy. Bring a friend, bring a family member. If you're really social, find a art group that meets. I know there's some like planner painting groups or like urban sketching groups that you could look up and find. Maybe there's a meetup or something. If you're in school, you could find a group that way. But I feel like for a lot of anxious people, that might not be the first, you know, step that you're gonna take. So you can find, they don't even need to be another artist friend, just somebody who you feel safe with and feel comfortable with that you might want to sit with. You could even bring a dog if you have a dog and that makes you feel more comfortable to just, you know, go to a new place who you can sit with and just kind of give you that extra courage to get going. Also, with bringing a buddy, sometimes routine can help. And if you schedule in a artist date or like a coffee date or something, you know, with somebody that you feel comfortable with, say you go Fridays at 9 a.m., whatever works for you and that person or people, schedule that time so that you know what to look forward to, and it kind of helps gear you up, maybe takes the guesswork out of when you're gonna go. The fifth step that I wanted to share about once you get to that place, or once you're out the door, or once you're at your neighbor's house or your friend's house, whatever that may be, is bring limited supplies. There's so many artists who make amazing, amazing work with just a pencil or a pen. And I think that sometimes that gets kind of forgotten about, like the technique that goes into that, but it is absolutely like I've just been more and more drawn to what people can do with limited supplies. I think that if you are somebody who is going to a new place, you're experiencing a lot of new stimulation, then having more limited choices when you're there allows you to limit stress while you're there. I mean, this might not be true to everyone. Sometimes if you're feeling like you're limiting yourself, that can create more anxiety. So it's obviously a personal preference, but for me at least, I feel like if I just have a pencil and my small sketchbook, then there's like zero pressure. I'm just making random marks. It allows me to really think about composition. If you're used to looking at a screen, like a photo or something much smaller scale that kind of already has the framing and the composition there for you, when you're at a 360, view of your park, your local park, or if you've gone on a hike and you're looking at everything, it can feel extremely overwhelming to pick what it is that you want to draw, especially if you're new to it and if you are just learning how to create composition and maybe you're not sure what the foundation of composition is. I mean, you are an artist, you are creative, so you have that innate feeling of what the mood is you want to portray or what you're gravitated towards, but it's just about fine-tuning that and kind of learning that about yourself. And I think that you'd never really stop learning that about it yourself. You're just maybe more quickly able to catch on to what you're drawn to. Is it that tree? Is it the way that the light hits the water? Is it the small flower or shell that's in front of me? All of these things. And with limited supplies, you might be more able to focus in on that and make those quick decisions rather than focusing on the color or things like that. However, color is very fun and just as important, but maybe you bring that in later. So this leads me on to my sixth step, and that is make panels. This is a great way to work on your composition skills as well as your narrative skills. I actually first started doing this in a class in school. In the teacher who later became my thesis mentor, during one class, she had us bring 3 materials and we all went outside and quickly made panels of little things around our school and around Portland that we were really drawn to. You barely have any time, you have limited supplies and you're just creating a narrative from what you see. I have utilized this same technique in my work since then because it is so helpful. You can do this at home too if you wanted to practice. Even if sometimes I'll go onto those like free picture websites or whatever, like Pexels or Unsplash, public domain, that's the word. And I'll go through the main homepage and it'll just you don't pick the photos, they'll just show up, but I'll kind of go and choose a few that I'm gravitated towards, and then I'll either draw the whole image or little bits of it and create panels from that. And that's a really great warm-up exercise for creating narrative and how images and threads within the landscape or in a story can link together. And that is a great way of doing that when you're out on location, because rather than drawing an entire view, sometimes that can feel a little bit anxiety inducing and there's more commitment there sometimes, But if you're doing panels, you're just picking little spots, whether you want to just focus on value and you're focusing on value in different areas, or you want to think about shape design or compare large scale and small scale. All these things you can do with panels, and you can also start incorporating color into them if you want to paint them. Sometimes it can feel like there's higher stakes if you're taking up an entire spread of your sketchbook, at least for me. But if you're doing little drawings, with maybe the same color palette or the same materials. It allows you to quickly move on from mistakes and you're learning as you go. You can also do this with large images as well, and like a big brush, big sketchbook, large pieces of paper. It really just depends on who you are as a person. And for me, these are just some tips that have helped me. The next tip I have for you moving on from panels is that it's perfectly fine to focus on something small rather than a large landscape. Sometimes that can feel very overwhelming especially if you're at a new place. It is helpful sometimes to just sit on a log or a rock somewhere where there's nobody around and just paint a flower, draw a flower, zero in on that flower, because it's still just as useful. You're still seeing how the light moves, you're getting used to the changing elements, how fast shadow can move, and that is all important when you're painting outdoors or drawing outdoors. You're also getting used to shape and composition that way as well. You can experiment with changing scale of things too. I think as you get more comfortable and familiar at a place or with being outdoors while you're painting, you're not tied to the way that something looks. You have full artistic creation, and I think that's something that reflects in my work when I'm very anxious and like worried, is that shows up in my work. It shows up in my painting. Sometimes that can look kind of cool, but for the most part, usually I'm very like stressed. And when I look back at a painting that I was very stressed doing and very precious with, it gives me that same feeling. And so I would suggest the more you do it, the more you will open up, and the more that you realize the possibility that painting outdoors holds for you. And I think that when you realize you can play with scale, like the flower can be just as big as a tree, or you see a bird, you quickly sketch the bird in and then paint it from memory in another painting from that day. There's so much opportunity that is there for you, and you get to make what you want of your experience. There's no right way or wrong way. The next tip that I wanted to share is before you go out or while you're there on location, is to prep your paper. If you've never prepped your paper, it's basically you're like messing it up so that you're not staring at a blank white page when you're sitting down to work. This can have many benefits. Obviously, it can take the pressure off of making those initial marks. It can create more texture, more depth to your piece. It can create unsuspected or unexpected end results. But that's kind of something that helps my anxiety when I go out, that I found, or when I'm sitting at the studio too. But if you just mess something up, put some extra paint on a paper. If you're painting something one day and you have a little bit extra paint, open up another page in your sketchbook and just kind of mess around and leave it be, and take it out and draw over top of it, paint over top of it, see what you can make of it when you're out and about. And this can just create less pressure. Some things to note that I have found throughout this is think about what you are going to layer over top of those materials, because if you are prepping your pages with oil pastels, that might not work with additional media on top unless you're maybe using more oil pastels. You could obviously use some like solvent or something to liquefy them, no, water them down kind of, and let that dry, and then you can work on top. But consider like things that are dry or how they might layer. Obviously in a sketchbook you don't really need to worry about things being archival per se, just think about how things might work over top of them. For example, I've done washes of acrylic on pages that I've gone to use gouache on top, and the gouache just didn't really have as much to grip onto or absorb into the paper because acrylic kind of sits on the paper and repels water kind of. So it was a little trickier to get used to that. However, I also found some really interesting ways, and I felt like I'd already like messed it up, so it was easier to just experiment and have fun. Hello from Editing Fiona. So I filmed the video and went on a walk, and I realized that I'd forgotten to share one of the tips that I'd written down, and that is to drive somewhere or have somebody drive you to a park or somewhere and just work from your car, because you don't have to leave. People aren't going to come up and talk to you if you're in your car, and you can just sit there and chill and be comfortable. Bring your supplies, look out the window. You could park in different parking spots if that's a thing, or pull over on the side of the road safely, please. And just park and paint from a view, because I'd done that a lot. Or last week it was raining all week and I had really wanted to go outside and paint, but obviously it was pouring, so I couldn't. So I just sat in the car with my boyfriend and he wrote and I painted, and it was great. We were dog sitting for my sister, and I went on a few little walks in the interim with Phoebe to, keep her entertained. And then we'd come back inside and I just keep painting, and it was really fun. I hope this video was helpful to all you anxious people out there or people who want to get started with painting outdoors or have been but have struggled with it. I just want to say, you are so capable of doing it, and there's so many ways to do it, because not only could this video be applied to anxious people, but it can also be applied to accessibility as well, because not all of these places where parks or hiking or wherever are accessible to everybody. There are just as valid ways to work indoors, work at a friend's house, work in places that are perhaps more accessible, that don't make you any less of an artist. They don't make you any less capable, talented, anything like that, of pursuing your dreams or pursuing your craft. And there's so many artists who painted out their window over and over and over and over again, and that's how they learned. You also can figure out what works for you if you want to just draw from pictures, but you also are building up your imagination skills and create worlds from those pictures in your imagination, and you're doing studies of you learn how value and form works from, say, setting up still lifes in your house, but then you can apply that to paintings or from pictures that you find online. Art, I feel is you are picking up stones or picking up fun little things you find, fun little tidbits of inspiration, and holding them in your basket, and then those don't go away. You still have those, and it doesn't matter how you find them. It's about what you do with them and what shiny little things stand out to you. And everybody's basket is going to be different at the end of the day. There might be some similarities, or you might look at somebody else's basket and see, wow, that shell's really pretty too. I hope I find something like that someday. But at the end of the day, your work is valid, and you are valid as an artist. And I forget that all the time. I'm not even gonna lie, doing this video, even I was anxious about, and I was worried, what are my credentials about talking about painting outdoors? Sometimes I don't even do it. Sometimes I'm too anxious or, struggling too much someday, and I don't even leave the house. But I feel like I just answered my own question, because clearly I have a lot of experience with being someone who is an anxious person who wants to continue learning and experience new situations within the way that I can and within the environments that are available to me. But I hope this video is helpful to you all. Let me know if there's any other tips that you have or that you've come across or heard from other people that really resonated with you or made it more capable or more accessible to continue painting from life or going outdoors. I would love to hear that, and I'm sure any other viewers would love to hear your experiences as well. But keep on working, keep on trying, and I will see you next week. Bye.